I'd barely taken my first sip of coffee when a shrill voice sliced through the quiet morning air. "Why isn't this master key opening your car? This is a clear violation." That accusation, sharp, entitled, and dripping with hostility, was the very first thing I heard at exactly 7:12 a.m. I stepped out onto my porch, the mug still warm in my hand, and froze. There she was, HOA Karen, crouched beside the driver's door of my truck like some self-appointed locksmith, furiously twisting a polished brass key in the lock. She was breathing hard, muttering to herself, and jamming the key like she truly believed she was defusing a national security threat instead of harassing a man on his own property. The moment she noticed me, she whipped around with a dramatic gasp, as if she had caught me burglarizing my own vehicle. "All vehicles in this community must allow HOA emergency access," she barked, waving the key at me like a badge of authority. "Your refusal to comply is highly suspicious." I hadn't even spoken a word yet. She tried the key again, harder this time. When it obviously didn't work, she straightened up, took a step back as though bracing for scandal, and grabbed her phone. And then, without hesitation, she dialed 911 right there in front of me. "Yes, hello," she said breathlessly. "There's a non-compliant male refusing mandatory HOA vehicle inspection. He's preventing access. It may be criminal." She pointed at me like I was robbing the neighborhood blind. What she didn't know, what she had absolutely no clue about, was that the non-compliant male she was reporting was the county sheriff. Before I dive deeper into how ridiculous things became, let me take you back to when all this started, because this chaos didn't happen overnight. Karen had been building toward this meltdown for years, one homemade violation slip at a time. When I first moved into this little cul-de-sac, I expected quiet mornings, respectful neighbors, maybe the occasional barbecue. What I got instead was an HOA president with far too much time, far too many rules, and far too little understanding of what authority she actually had. My home sat right on the edge of the HOA's boundary line, close enough for Karen to see, far enough that she technically had zero jurisdiction. That technicality? It tormented her soul. The first time she welcomed me, she didn't smile, introduce herself, or offer any neighborly greeting. No, she marched up the driveway like she was leading a military raid, clipboard tucked against her chest. "Law enforcement vehicles may cause unnecessary alarm," she announced, staring pointedly at my patrol cruiser parked in the driveway. "You'll need to move that somewhere less visible." It took me several seconds to process the absurdity. Then calmly I explained. The cruiser was legally parked, legally registered, and absolutely not subject to her personal anxiety. Her smile tightened like a drawn bowstring. She made a note on her clipboard. Then she walked away as if she'd just documented evidence for my upcoming trial. That was only the beginning. A few days later, I found the first of what would eventually become hundreds of ridiculous notices taped to my cruiser. Unauthorized government imagery in public view, $45 fine. Government imagery. She meant the sheriff's star on the door. I laughed so loudly the neighbor across the street looked over. I peeled the paper off and tucked it into a folder inside the house. Back then, I didn't know that folder would eventually turn into a 3-inch binder full of fabricated infractions, each one more ridiculous than the last. Over the months, the list grew. She cited me for leaving tire tracks on my own driveway after a rainstorm. Violation, inautorised terrain modification. She warned me for the way sunlight reflected off my chrome grille. Violation, visual intimidation. She once tried to tell me my mailbox was too confidently positioned. Whatever that meant. But the moment everything changed, the moment she stopped being a nuisance and began reinventing herself as some sort of rogue security director, was the morning she appeared at my door with a clipboard and a straight face. "We need a copy of your car keys for HOA emergency access," she announced as if this was the most reasonable request in the world. I blinked once, twice. Then I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Not a chance." She stiffened. Her jaw twitched. Then she gave me the ominous line that should have served as a warning. "We'll revisit this." And Karen always revisited. Fast forward to this morning. The morning she tried to jam a brass master key into my truck like she was unlocking the gates of Fort Knox, then proceeded to call 911 when her plan fell apart. By the time the patrol car arrived, Karen was pacing frantically in the street, rehearsing her accusations like a theater performance. She didn't even glance at me. Deputy Ray stepped out, recognized me instantly, and raised an eyebrow. "Morning, Sheriff." Karen froze mid-rant. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened and closed like a buffering computer screen. Why didn't—" Ray smothered a grin. "I believe you made a report about him." She sputtered for nearly a minute before muttering something about misunderstanding and storming off so fast her sandals slapped the pavement like applause. But embarrassment never slowed Karen down. It energized her. By the next morning, the neighborhood had been carpet-bombed with bright pink flyers, each one drowning in glitter glue and exclamation marks. Urgent community action required. Stop the non-compliant vehicle. She'd made posters as if she were campaigning against a natural disaster, not a truck belonging to the county sheriff. She accused my vehicle of posing a community threat. She insisted I refused HOA-approved safety procedures, whatever that meant. But the moment everything changed, the moment she stopped being a nuisance and began reinventing herself as some sort of rogue security director, was the morning she appeared at my door with a clipboard and a straight face. "We need a copy of your car keys for HOA emergency access," she announced as if this was the most reasonable request in the world. I blinked once, twice. Then I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Not a chance." She stiffened. Her jaw twitched. Then she gave me the ominous line that should have served as a warning. "We'll revisit this." And Karen always revisited. Fast forward to this morning. The morning she tried to jam a brass master key into my truck like she was unlocking the gates of Fort Knox, then proceeded to call 911 when her plan fell apart. By the time the patrol car arrived, Karen was pacing frantically in the street, rehearsing her accusations like a theater performance. She didn't even glance at me. Deputy Ray stepped out, recognized me instantly, and raised an eyebrow. "Morning, Sheriff." Karen froze mid-rant. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened and closed like a buffering computer screen. Why didn't—" Ray smothered a grin. "I believe you made a report about him." She sputtered for nearly a minute before muttering something about misunderstanding and storming off so fast her sandals slapped the pavement like applause. But embarrassment never slowed Karen down. It energized her. By the next morning, the neighborhood had been carpet-bombed with bright pink flyers, each one drowning in glitter glue and exclamation marks. Urgent community action required. Stop the non-compliant vehicle. She'd made posters as if she were campaigning against a natural disaster, not a truck belonging to the county sheriff. She accused my vehicle of posing a community threat. She insisted I refused HOA-approved safety procedures, reflective paint disturbance, unauthorized law enforcement symbols, driveway shadow imbalance. Yes, she had fined me for the shape of my truck's shadow. That's when the shift happened. She wasn't just nitpicking anymore. She was escalating, planning, pushing towards something louder, bigger, and far more absurd. She wanted control, not of the truck, of me. And the worst part? My driveway wasn't HOA property at all. I switched from sheriff with patience to sheriff with documentation. Photos, flyers, emails, recordings, neighbor statements, everything. I wasn't building a case out of anger. I was building it because I knew exactly where she was heading. And then she proved me right. The next morning, my driveway looked like a ceremonial runway. 26 neon orange flags, lined in 2 perfect rows, guiding the eye straight to my truck. Each flag read, "Whole claim pending, vehicle access, gate under review." A gate, across my driveway, to control access to my own vehicle. Her footprints were all over the soil, those unmistakable orthopedic sandals stamping out her claim like she was planting a colonial flag. I crouched, picked up one of the flags, and exhaled slowly. Karen hadn't crossed the line. She'd sprinted past it. This wasn't reaction anymore. This was strategy. And she had no idea she was building the perfect case against herself. I photographed everything, flag spacing, angles, footprints, placement. Evidence for later. Evidence for when real jurisdiction stepped in. My phone buzzed. "Mark, dude, check your driveway. She's lost it." I sent him a picture. His reply came instantly. "She's building runway lights now?" I laughed until I heard it. That familiar clack, clack, clack of Karen's sandals marching toward my property. She appeared at the bottom of the driveway, clutching her clipboard like a sacred scroll. "Good morning," she said with strained politeness. "I'm sure it is," I replied, holding one of her neon flags like a piece of evidence. "I see you've noticed the preliminary markers," she said. "The HOA has initiated a vehicle access evaluation for community safety." "On my property?" I asked. "Property lines are fluid in safety matters," she declared. Fluid. That was a new one, even for her. She tilted her chin toward my truck. "Your vehicle's defiance is well documented." My truck's defiance? "It refuses universal access," she said, as though she were reciting federal law. I let the silence stretch before pointing at the flags. "You placed these yourself?" "Of course." The board unanimously approved the preliminary stage. I nearly smiled, because I knew, and the board knew, that wasn't even remotely true. And that lie would become one of the most important pieces in the case she was accidentally building for me. Karen stood in my driveway, arms stiff, chin raised like she was guarding a national border instead of trespassing on private property. Before she could launch into another speech, a familiar black SUV slowed to a stop at the curb. Deputy Ray stepped out. Again, he took one look at the flags, the clipboard, Karen's stance, and sighed so hard it shook the morning air. "Ma'am," he said, "we've talked about this." Karen didn't blink. "This is official HOA business. You're interfering with a safety operation." Ray glanced at me. I simply lifted one of the neon flags. His jaw tightened. "Ma'am, you placed these on his driveway?" "I placed them," she declared proudly, "on community-adjacent territory." Ray rubbed his forehead. "That's not a thing." For a beat, no one spoke. Then Ray pulled out a folded document, one I recognized. I'd sent him copies of the property boundary maps the night before. "Karen," he said carefully, "this driveway is not under HOA jurisdiction. It never has been. Not 1 inch." Her face froze. Her fingers tightened around her clipboard. She looked at the map, then at the truck, then back at Ray. "That map must be outdated." "It's from last month," he replied. Karen blinked hard, her world cracking down the middle. Ray continued, "You've entered property you don't govern, installed unauthorized markers, issued fabricated fines, and attempted to enforce non-existent rules. That's trespassing and harassment." She flinched at the last word. "This is a misunderstanding," she whispered, suddenly so small it was almost shocking. "Ma'am," Ray said firmly, stepped back from the driveway. For the first time since I'd known her, Karen hesitated. Then she slowly, reluctantly took a single step backward onto the sidewalk, the only place she technically had any authority. She looked at me, her voice trembling between pride and panic. This isn't over, but the trembling told me even she didn't believe that anymore. The investigation was quick. Neighbors came forward. Photos surfaced. Recordings, flyers, fake citations, all of it stacked neatly like a tower built by Karen's own hands. The HOA board held a vote. It took 4 minutes. Unanimous. Karen was removed as president, then barred from issuing notices, then prohibited from approaching resident property lines for any regulatory purpose. The neon flags disappeared. The glitter flyers stopped. The homemade fines vanished overnight. Peace finally returned to the cul-de-sac. A week later, Mar dropped by with 2 cups of iced tea. "Feels strange," he said, glancing around. "No flyers, no gelling, no sandal footsteps." "It's nice," I said. He nodded, then grinned. "So what are you going to do with that giant binder?" I glanced at the thick folder, now a monument to the wildest HOA saga I had ever handled. "I'm keeping it," I said. "Makes a great teaching tool." "Teaching?" he asked. I smiled. "For new deputies. About what not to do with authority."
The story's over. Now let's get real. Imagine standing there on all that land, every inch legally yours. If you were in the owner's shoes, what would you do? Let them stay, sell the homes, or pull some other wild move? Drop your answer in the comments and let's see who's the boldest.